Two lanterns blinked from the steeple of Christ Church in Boston on the night of April 18, 1775, a signal agreed upon in whispers weeks before. One lantern if the redcoats marched by land. Two if they crossed the Charles by boat. Sexton Robert Newman climbed that tower with a lamp in each hand while, a quarter-mile away, British grenadiers were already wading into longboats. Paul Revere had to get across the river first. He borrowed a rowboat and wrapped the oars in a petticoat, donated, the story goes, by a patriot woman who pulled it from her own body on the spot. The HMS Somerset sat at anchor in the dark, 60 guns and a sleepless watch. Revere rowed past her close enough to hear the officer call the hour. In Charlestown, a horse was waiting, borrowed from a farmer named John Larkin, a rangy mare that could run. Revere rowed hard northwest through the April dark, pulling up at every farmhouse to pound on shutters. His warning wasn't "the British are coming," everyone in Massachusetts was technically British. What he actually shouted was simpler and more urgent: "The regulars are out." William Dawes had slipped out of Boston an hour earlier by the Southern Land route, talking his way past British sentries at Boston Neck with some story about a family errand. He reached Lexington from the other direction just as Revere arrived, and together they woke Samuel Adams and John Hancock, two men with British warrants practically already written, and urged them to run. Pressing on toward Concord, they picked up a third rider, Samuel Prescott, a local doctor who happened to be riding home late from a courting visit. He knew every wall, wood, and cart track in that country. Lucky, as it turned out. A British patrol stepped out of the darkness near Lincoln. 4 horsemen, then more, Revere was surrounded and seized at pistol point. Dawes bolted, fell from his horse in a farmyard, and couldn't continue on foot. Prescott drove his horse at a stone wall, cleared it in the dark, and vanished across the fields toward Concord. Prescott delivered the warning. By sunrise, colonial militiamen, farmers mostly, 60 or 70 of them, were drawn up on Lexington Green facing 700 British regulars in full kit. Somebody fired. Nobody agrees who. The British marched on to Concord and found the stores mostly removed. They turned around and walked into the longest day of their lives. Paul Revere's name became legend. Samuel Prescott's, the man who actually finished the ride, was nearly forgotten for a century. Strip away the legend and what remains is a logistics operation held together by borrowed oars, a stranger's petticoat, and a doctor riding home late from a courting visit. No single hero finished the job. The network did, dozens of people who knew a wall, a woodlet, a back road, and acted on it in the dark. The alarm spread because the plan was distributed. Revere got captured. Dawes fell off his horse. Prescott cleared a stone wall and kept going. The stores in Concord were mostly already moved. What actually happened on April 18, 1775 was messier, more contingent, and more collaborative than any poem was ever going to capture, and it worked anyway, precisely because it didn't depend on any one man to carry it. What strikes us isn't that Revere got the credit, it's how long nobody thought to ask why. The name that rhymed won. The man who actually finished the ride was a footnote for a century, not because the record was hidden but because the story had already settled, and settled stories are hard to reopen. We don't think that's unique to 1775. We think it's how most credit gets assigned, early, loudly, and in favor of whoever had the better introduction. Which makes us wonder, if the legend you grew up believing turned out to rest on one missing name, how hard would you actually want to look for the others?